Sneakers and Cleats, the podcast.
Cowboys owner, president, general manager, Jerry Jones. Our new Dallas Cowboys head coach, Brian Schottenheimer.
And with that, it's official. Brian Schottenheimer, the new head coach of the Dallas Cowboys. Welcome into Sneakers and Cleats, the podcast. It's Monday, January 27th, the day that all of Cowboys fans' hopes seem dashed. This is episode 166. Don Harris, Chuck Miketinac, Matt Roy on tap for you. Happy birthday, Don.
Thank you, Matthew.
Before we get started, I want to wish Don a happy 87th birthday.
Yeah. 27.
Doesn't look a day over 75. It's fine.
Thank you, Matt. No, very blessed. Blessed and grateful for another trip around the sun.
Absolutely. Well, happy birthday, Don. He's not that old. Don't worry. He's younger than that.
He's young at heart.
Young at heart.
Yeah. Your only age is just, it's just a number,
an age.
right?
But a number.
It's just an age.
I was telling my 30-year-old son that the other day. It's like, your body does break down and you change. But and my mom told me this years ago, and she's still living and she's 88. It doesn't matter what the number is. In here, sometimes you're still like 26, 28, 35.
Until you look in the mirror.
That's right.
You just seem older because you've been at News 4 since you were negative 12. So, got a lot to go on today. We got the Brian Schottenheimer stuff. Wanted to get well wishes going to Don first, but Brian Schottenheimer, now the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys. We're going to break down the entire press conference, or not the entire one. He lasted over an hour. So we'll touch on a few of the topics, but a lot of interesting things came out of Jerry and Steven and Brian's mouths. Plus, we'll touch on the Spurs a little bit, assuming we have time at the end. They split the Paris games. What did we learn from the Spurs after this week across the pond? So no trivia today, got a lot to get to. So let's get right to the Cowboys. 10th head coach in Cowboys history is Brian Schottenheimer. Officially introduced today. We're going to start talking about the presser, but first let's hear from the new head coach first about from his opening statement.
I've had some opportunities when I was a much younger man that I didn't feel like I was ready. I'm ready now. I know what I want. I know what it looks like. One of my greatest strengths is my ability to create relationships. Relationships that are built on trust, respect, connection. I'm really good with X's and O's, but I'm great with people. And the type of men that we have in this locker room are excited about that. And so I think as we build this thing out, as the culture comes together of this team, that's where I feel like my greatest impact will be felt. My father was a legendary coach, a great man, but he was an incredible father. And he's impacted me more than anyone in this profession. I know he's looking down on me. I know he's proud. And I miss him very much. But I know what he'd say to me. He'd say, Brian, the easy part is over. It's time to get to work. I love you, Dad. Thank you, everybody that's here. Go Cowboys.
Brian Schottenheimer, obviously the son of the late Marty Schottenheimer, one of the best head coaches to never win a Super Bowl. Brian obviously hoping to correct that legacy and be the Schottenheimer to win one. Chuck, I'll start with you. What were your thoughts on Brian, and what were your thoughts on the opening press conference as a whole?
I guess for me, it's what did we learn today? I don't know that we learned a whole lot, right? I mean, the Cowboys, we learned that, again, over and over, that Jerry's a risk taker. He admitted he's taking a risk with this. Obviously, he would have been taking a risk no matter who he's going to hire as head coach. But, obviously having Brian Schottenheimer in the building for these last 2+ years made an impact on Jerry along the way. Little things, Jerry brought up the fact that, after a tough loss, Brian Schottenheimer was in there, but he'd be the guy that would point out the positives or, really change the mood in the room. I'm sure there's a lot of things that Brian Schottenheimer brings to the table here, and we'll see how it goes. I mean, I don't know, though, that anybody's thoughts about, what this looks like or was this the right hire? I don't know that any of those questions obviously got answered today. So, I don't know, it just seemed like a gigantic filibuster today about risk-taking and, we want to change, but we want some continuity with what we've been doing. So, I don't know about I mean, again, I don't know exactly what we learned today. Not a whole lot.
Right. You want to change, but you don't want that much change. Don, what about you?
Yeah, I think the overriding theme is it's a familiarity hire. Look, when you're hiring the coach of the Dallas Cowboys, you hope that you're getting the very best possible candidate for the job. And I do not believe that Brian Schottenheimer is the best candidate for this job. When I look out there at that coaching landscape, I would have said Aaron Glenn, who is an amazing leader of men, who has done it in Detroit, and who would shake things up. Chuck and I both have been through, I don't know, Chuck, I won't speak for you, but I've been through, 10 or 12 news directors in my career. And every time there's a change, the feeling in the newsroom is, boy, I hope they promote this person that we know because we're comfortable with this person. But a lot of times it's been my experience that they didn't do that. They brought in a stranger, and the stranger was exactly what we needed to shake things up with new ideas. And I think Dak Prescott has so much juice because of what they're paying him, and Jerry said as much, that this is Dak's hire because I'm comfortable with Brian. And I don't know, it might turn out to be 100% correct. It might turn out to be the best thing ever, that he can get Dak over some hump that Dak's never been able to get over. But to me, it just seems like a safe, comfortable fallback plan after they weren't really prepared for McCarthy's departure.
That makes sense. It did seem as though they were taken aback by the McCarthy thing. There was a lot of reports out there that they were prepared to rehire McCarthy, and he didn't exactly want to come back, or that it didn't exactly work out that way, and so they were kind of grasping at straws in this whole hiring process. I don't know exactly how accurate that is, but in terms of the risk and the unglamorous hire aspect of this, Chuck, let's hear from Jerry talking a little bit about the process of getting to Brian Schottenheimer.
Yes, to some, and it might be couched as a less than glamorous hire. What I would say to you is I got here taking shots and not shoddy shots. I got here taking shots. Good things have happened. Let me tell you something. There's some stuff to be had over there where not many people go. There is. Don't think for 1 minute I won't take a shot. This was risky. This is risky. But by the same token, how often can you take a risk when someone has had over 30 years, almost 30 years, getting my numbers mixed up, but almost 30 years of being around coaches, of being around players. That's 2/3 of his life. And then the rest of it growing up in a football-oriented, NFL-oriented family, if you will. I think this might make something special.
To me, a couple of things were explicitly clear in Jerry's stance today. First, I thought it was hilarious that he allows Brian to go first, which is good, 7 minutes of opening statement. And then the first question, Jerry rambles for 12 minutes. So he had to one-up him there a little bit, trying to defend the hire, and he didn't really even get to the hire until the last minute of it. He used the word risk over and over and over and over in this press conference. And it's very clear that he has heard everything written and read, or heard everything said and read everything that was written about him over the last 72 hours, or even over the last 2 weeks since Mike left. It's very clear that he felt the need to defend himself, the hiring process of Brian Schottenheimer. I just don't know. I don't know if he's going to be able to sell this, because he was very clearly trying to sell, this is something that I know is going to work and that I feel is going to be the right move for us. I have found a hidden gem that no one else has found. Has he, though, is the question.
Go ahead.
I have found this with Jerry. I think we knew this about Jerry before, but it's been very evident this cycle. Right? Jerry sees himself as the most successful man in the world, smarter than everybody else, and I'm at where I'm at because I did this or that, right? And so what Jerry continued to say again today was, I've done this because I took risks. When I first bought the Cowboys, I was 46. I don't know how many times I've heard that one.
Yeah.
And we drilled a dry hole, and then I hit Gusher, and that allowed me. And you got to throw all your cards on the table. And if you don't, you're in the river, and if you don't, you own the boat, and all these kind of things, right? About being a gambler. But what Jerry doesn't realize is that he has been an abject failure for the last 30 years, and he likes to think, I built a winner, and I got to where I'm at by doing this. Well, where has that gotten you, right? Yes, you hired Jimmy Johnson, and Jimmy Johnson hit the jackpot, and Jimmy Johnson was the greatest thing ever, and they even won a championship after he left because Barry inherited his players.
And he controlled the personnel.
But since then, it's been 30 years of nothing because you're trying to do it yourself. And so I think he's just living he and Steven both are living in this world. Like, none of this matters unless you get football players. They're talking about their roster being one of the best. They're talking about Dak being one of the best. They're not. They're not. They are a bad football team. So I don't think Brian Schottenheimer coming in and having relationships with bad players are going to make them any better between the lines. It's maddening to me.
I just was taken, to Don's point about, obviously they've been reading and listening to everything that's been said the last couple of weeks, and instantly it's defensive posture, right? Come out and
100%.
justify why you're doing this instead of, here's why, he's the guy, and it was, trying to explain as if you're trying to appease the fan base when, really you shouldn't be listening necessarily to the peanut gallery if you're trying to move an organization forward, I think. So, yeah, it has something to do with business, I guess, and they're always thinking about the brand and all that. But, I was also struck, too, how much and how many times the name Pete Carroll came up today. Mm-hmm. I got to a point in this press conference of thinking, why didn't you hire Pete Carroll? It was apparent what Pete Carroll meant to Brian Schottenheimer as he makes this move up. And obviously Jerry respected Pete Carroll enough to pick up the phone, and now Pete Carroll's sitting with the Raiders. So I don't know. It was interesting in a lot of ways today, filibustery in a lot of ways.
As always, right?
Yeah.
And didn't it sound like, well, I think I know the answer to your question is, why isn't it Pete Carroll? And it's not Pete Carroll because the Pete Carrolls of the world won't take this job knowing the way Jerry operates. The reason that Brian Schottenheimer is the coach, he'll settle for the years, he'll settle for the money, he'll settle to do what Jerry wants to do, he'll settle for just having the title, and he's basically just going to be an offensive coordinator in job. He'll call the plays. But Jerry's running the show. Steven's running the show. How many other press conferences that we saw today, Aaron Glenn, Pete Carroll, whoever, did you see Woody Johnson at that press conference today?
Yeah.
Did he get up and talk?
Yeah.
Did he talk for a very long?
I don't know.
Did he just introduce?
I was watching an hour and a half of Cowboys press conference. I don't know.
Right. But all three of them are sitting on the podium, whereas Aaron Glenn's up there by himself. And I just think that the circus, and Troy said it best, I don't know if it's a coveted job anymore.
Yeah, and Chuck said that as well a couple weeks ago that this was still a coveted job. The inverse to what Troy said.
For the right person who wants to do it under the pretenses.
This is the candidate that the Cowboys get now, though. I don't know Brian from anybody. I've never met him. I don't want to talk bad about him because I have no idea him or who he is. But this is the kind of candidate you get, a first-year head coach that has been around the game a long time that needs that opportunity. Jason Garrett had never been a head coach before. They're going to say that he was the interim, so technically this is not the first head coach that they've hired. Dave Campo is the only other one. But Jason Garrett, also never been a head coach before, was made the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys. This is who they like to hire. Brian Schottenheimer-esque people who want the opportunity, who will defer to Jerry, who will defer to Steven when it comes to personnel, and who will try and make do with what they're given by the higher-ups. But Jerry is obviously pulling the strings, and that's just who the Cowboys hire nowadays. Mike McCarthy was the outlier. Mike McCarthy was the guy that had prestige coming in that was expected to take this team over the hump. They saw that didn't work, and now they're moving to same old, same old.
I don't know. I mean, they had Parcells back in the day, too. I mean, it's not like they haven't gone out and gotten the quote-unquote guy with, the multiple Super Bowls and all that. And I've never heard Bill Parcells speak anything badly about his time working with Jerry and that it was Jerry's way or the highway. I mean, I think they've got a system in place, and it's never just all Jerry or just Steven or the head coach or whatever it is. I think sometimes it gets overblown. And, I mean, it's fair for somebody to have the perception that maybe this isn't the job that everybody wants. But at the end of the day, if you're talking about valuable franchises, this is numero uno on planet Earth.
Sure.
So,
yeah.
Because maybe they haven't won and there's the pressure to win here is greater than in other places. Or at least that's the perception I have.
Yeah. Jeremy.
So, I don't know.
I think if you were to ask fans, if Pete Carroll would have been hired today, if Bill Belichick would have been hired today, heck, even I think
a known commodity.
I even think with Aaron Glenn, if coming from Detroit, if you have confidence that this is a guy that can turn it around, make them a winner. If Jerry was to back off and say, it's Belichick's team, I'm going to let him do his thing. We're going to give him the keys. I think the fans would have confidence in that. I don't think there's anything today that gave fans confidence that Brian Schottenheimer is going to do anything to take the Cowboys to an NFC Championship game or a Super Bowl.
Speaking of the fans, this was Jerry's message to the fans later in the press conference.
But to those fans who have been with us, this decision to bring Schotty in is risky. It's not a Hail Mary at all in any way. But it's founded over some very unique, as I started off, unique sets of circumstances. I know how much our fans are into the Dallas Cowboys. And for me to be into it is no solace at all. We're interested, they're interested, I'm interested in getting to those playoffs and winning. This is the best way that we can go to the playoffs and win.
I mean, that's very clearly his objective today was to sell the fans on this hire. That's what he had to do because
he did do a good job.
I've seen numerous times, numerous people tweet and put out on Facebook and all that, you lost a fan today when this hire was announced. I'm destroying my Cowboys stuff. I'm no longer a fan of the team because I can't stand Jerry Jones anymore. I can't stand the way he runs this organization. I saw that dozens and dozens of times. Is it going to show up? People are still going to go to the games. It's not going to really affect them. But I do think that Jerry saw some of that and did his best today to try and sell Brian Schottenheimer to the fans, to the media, and to everybody, knowing that if this doesn't work, it falls squarely on his neck.
I've seen some very impressive first-day press conferences of coaches come in and take over programs. One of the best ever was Jeff Traylor when his first day at UTSA. And you go, wow, like Aaron Glenn today, if you watch the Jets press conference. Okay, I'm fired up. Mm-hmm. I'm getting behind this guy. This guy did none of that. This guy was, whoop-de-doo, I got the job. I'm really happy. My dad was a good coach. And Jerry and Steven liked me because I crack jokes in players' meeting rooms. And he seems like he knows what he's doing, X's and O's wise. Dak likes him. That's his calling card. That's why he got the job. Dak likes him. I have no confidence that they'll go any better than they've done. And I think this is Jerry appealing to Dak because he's invested so much money in him.
Yeah, I mean, looking at the overall on this, they made it abundantly clear that they like some of the things they were doing with McCarthy. This is part of why Schottenheimer gets the job, right? But they also want to do some different things, more motions, more play action, more
cut splits.
No, just a more of an effort to pound the ball. That's probably what's going to win in the postseason. So, but you got to get the guys to do it. I think they found their guy. Maybe they didn't know that they had, obviously with Rico, but you need to do whatever you can to make the running game better and more efficient. It's going to make your whole team probably better the more you can keep your defense off the field and control the clock. So, again, I don't know that they were going to win this day no matter what, not knowing what the draft looks like, not knowing what they're going to do, if anything, in free agency. And, if they're able to go out and maybe get a player or two in free agency, maybe that is the thing that shakes up the fan base a little bit. Like, hey, look, they're all in, they're all committed. I don't know how you can do that at a press conference coming off the year that they just had and, try to win the day and really change the minds of the sour taste that everybody has in their mouths, even with how this process went. I mean, I think we were spitballing last week, why would you make this hire when there might be some viable candidate in one of the 4 teams that's left standing in the postseason that you at least want to kick the tires on or have a conversation with, that maybe you'll find something in that leads you to, at least explore some other options other than your conventional wisdom, which is we want to make some changes, but we don't want to make, universal changes as we go forward. So I think it was a little odd. The timing, all of it, why wouldn't you want to talk to one of these coordinators or maybe see if Kellen Moore has an interest if
apparently he did. That was the reporting from Adam Schefter on Sunday.
That he did?
Was that Kellen Moore was disappointed that they made the hire before interviewing him again. I could,
and I don't know that Kellen Moore would be the right guy for the job.
Neither
He's
do I.
certainly doing a great job
King,
in Philadelphia. That's obvious with where they're at.
Cliff Kingsbury's available today, so might have wanted to touch on him.
But see, Cliff doesn't have an offense that works for Dak, right? Or
if you can't make an offense, if it's great players,
I think Cliff, I think Cliff would adapt to the personnel. I mean,
absolutely.
I think he showed that he did that with Jaden Daniels.
No, that's not my point. My point is Dak won't adapt.
Oh,
Dak's in his comfort level.
Let's get to some viewer comments here, and thank you for everyone who is tuning in and commenting for us.
This is a reflection of what you were just saying a second ago about the fans, Matt, from Joseph. Jerry Jones is a joke, and I hope fans will boycott any game from here on out. I will never buy any Cowboys merchandise. I am switching to the Texans. Anyway, they're closer to San Antonio.
Switching to the Texans, who don't have an offensive coordinator at the moment.
But, do you think there'll be any movement from Cowboys to Texans?
There'll be some. It's Coca-Cola, man. The Cowboys are Coca-Cola, and there's not a lot of movement off that brand.
You got to have decades of
What else?
To try to rest. And I mean, that's not a fair fight. It's not a reflection on the Texans, who are obviously building something really, really nice that we can see right before our very eyes. But this is,
it's like a religion. It's like a being, whether you're changing from being Catholic to being Protestant.
Yeah.
You grew up in
Cowboy fans all over the country, not just in Texas.
Yeah,
I guess.
And there's some argument in the chat about if they'll have 3 wins or 5 wins next year.
I mean, it's too soon to tell because you don't know who's going to be on this roster.
Yeah.
You have 22 free agents. You don't know who the running back's going to be. You don't know how healthy everyone's going to be. But for me, this hire says this hire is trying to make hay where their $60 million per year quarterback lets them make hay. You know, it's trying to make chicken salad out of a chicken bleep contract, which they just gave him. They need that contract to not be Deshaun Watson. They need that contract to not be this anvil that brings them down to the bottom of the ocean. And This is Jerry saying, I think Brian is going to be the best guy that will get the most out of Dak Prescott.
Well, I think to your point, it's fair to say that Dak's contract limits what you can do, right?
Personnel-wise.
These are now the parameters. That's right. And if this is how much Dak is making out of this, and you've got to fill out the rest of the roster, I think that's fair to say that they're doing the best they can with what they see in Schottenheimer and trying to make this the best possible offense for Dak Prescott.
If you have Patrick Mahomes and you say everything we have to do as a franchise has to be with Patrick Mahomes in mind. He's our guy. It's our system. It's our offense. He's our franchise. Absolutely. Move hell and high water to do whatever you have to do for your franchise around that franchise guy. Where I think the Cowboys have made the biggest mistake is they have that philosophy. Steven said it again today. He thinks Dak Prescott is a top 5 quarterback in the
He said
NFL.
maybe the best quarterback.
He said maybe the best. And it's that blinders from Jerry and Steven with Dak, who is now going to be going into year 10,
32 years old.
32 years old, with 2 playoff wins in his career, and a severely broken ankle, and now a hamstring torn off the bone. We've seen how it's limited his mobility going into this year. He wasn't great in the first 9 games when they were 3-6. I don't see that. I don't see Dak, and I've been tough on Dak, and I know he's better than I think he is. But I think he's probably the 10th or 12th best quarterback in the league. And to do all of this for the guy that you think is – Jerry thought the same thing with Tony Romo. He thought the same thing with Jason Garrett. So, I just think they live with blinders on in that regard.
I think there was one part of the press conference that was a little encouraging, and if you're a fan hoping for change and hoping for improvement next year, and it's something that I heard through the grapevine this weekend from someone else in the media that is a little bit more tuned in than we are, is that Brian Schottenheimer a lot of the times bit his tongue when Mike McCarthy wanted to do things that he didn't necessarily agree with, but Mike's the head coach. It's his offense. This is what we're going to do. And that Brian actually has a lot of other ideas of how this offense should look, how this offense should run that didn't necessarily coincide with what Mike McCarthy was doing. He was really offensive coordinator in name only because it wasn't his offense. And so that's a little encouraging for me because I think there's a lot of change, or a lot of people that want to see a lot of change on the Dallas Cowboys offense. And I think that we will see a new offense next year. How different it'll be, that's obviously up in the air. But I do think it won't be the same old in terms of continuity and how the offense looks. There will be a different look to it and a different feel to it. Is it better? I don't know. But it will look and feel different, I think, knowing or hearing what we have heard.
And that all goes back to personnel. You gotta have talent, and they don't.
Yeah, I mean, they have a little bit of talent. Their offensive line is encouraging. Their quarterback is above mediocre, I would say, above average.
Yeah. I mean, they've got an A quarterback.
They have an A plus receiver.
They've got some A linemen. Obviously, you've got Micah Parsons.
I mean,
I think you've got good, solid, in a lot of regards, elite DBs.
I think Jalen Tolbert showed you he can be a number 3.
I mean, and I think, when their roster was at its worst, they played pretty damn good football. So, maybe they're a little more deep than we're willing to give them credit at this point. But, I think there are reasons to be encouraged, right? I mean, if you watched the Cowboys' last game of the year and watched the Cowboys face Washington, and then Washington ends up in the NFC Championship, I mean, that's what can happen if you play well once you get to the postseason. So, is this going to be the move that gets them over the top? Obviously, nobody knows at this point. Let's just see. Okay, here we are. We got a new head coach. Now let's see what the rest of the offseason looks like. How are they going to do in the draft, and are they going to go make an attempt to go get some free agents?
As we sit here right now, I would be willing to bet that their record next year is better than their record this year was. Barring a cavalcade of injuries that we saw this year. Like, if CD and Dak get hurt again, I'll that's raw. You know what I mean?
We need to see what they do with their free agent spending.
Well, that's where I was going to go next. You heard Jerry say the same old lines again. The credit card bill comes due, and you can't, push money around and blah blah blah.
Yet. We had less money than
we
Derrick
know
Henry.
I'm better at the cap than almost anybody. I know the cap better than anybody. He said that, and then right afterwards said we need to get better at managing the cap, which was kind of funny because he knows the cap better than anybody. But as you now know, the head coach, Matt Eberflus, is flying in, according to reports, that will be the defensive coordinator. You want to give me 20 seconds on that real quick before we go to the next?
He should be disqualified from ever coaching in the NFL again at any position.
He won't have to manage time.
Seventh grade kids that play Madden know better.
He will not have to do time management here. He just has to coach defense.
I thought it was fascinating last night listening to the NFC press conferences after the ball game, and Sirianni brought up Eberflus's name as where he learned that, how important it was to coach and do, have attention to detail when it comes to creating turnovers, that's where Eberflus made a really big impression on him. And I mean, I know they all coach it and they all say the same thing when it comes to that, but I thought it was pretty random out of the blue that Sirianni, here he is on the biggest stage, or the second biggest
trying to help his buddy out.
Yeah.
But now we know who the head coach is going to be. We think we know some of the coaching staff is going to be. We'll see what happens with the rest of the coaching staff. But it's going to be interesting to see what they do when it comes to the Senior Bowl, when it comes to the draft, when it comes to free agency. So if they don't make a lot of moves, it's going to be another off season full of criticism. That's just how
They
it's
got to get better. They got to get the roster better.
We're not going to get to the Spurs today. We're already going a little longer than I wanted to. I do want to get your guys' thoughts on the Super Bowl matchup real quick before we get out of here. So, Chuck, I'll start with you. Eagles, Chiefs for the second time in 3 years. What are your thoughts on the Super Bowl matchup for Super Bowl 59?
Don and I were watching the game at the end of the game, and both popped into our mind, I believe, about the same time as how's Cook not on the field on the first play to start the final last drive? Yes. On a guy that had an unbelievable day. I think he had 16 touches total.
8.6 yards per touch.
They had no answer for him coming out of the backfield. He wasn't even on the field that first snap. I don't know. I think you get to the point where you can overthink things, and at some point, what do your eyes tell you, right? Nobody on Kansas City, in terms of a linebacker, had any answer for Cook out of the backfield in that ball game. And, obviously they're one Hail Mary type play away from maybe extending their season or at least having a chance to. The Chiefs always amaze me in that they just find a way, right? They don't make the huge, egregious error. Some would say they've got a lot of lady luck on their side. I won't go there because I don't want to demean what they've done over the last 3 years to that degree. And then the Eagles, man, when you can run the ball in big games to the tune of over 200 yards a game, I mean, hats off to those guys. I mean, they're finding ways to maximize what they have. And again, it didn't matter who carried the ball yesterday. They pretty much had their way and should be a hell of a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Don?
I like the Chiefs. Patrick Mahomes, I read, was 8 for 8 when trailing in the fourth quarter overtime in the playoffs to take the lead, to tie the game or take the lead. He's just clutch. I mean, yeah, they get calls, and yeah, there's some luck involved, it seems. But that's just, we used to say the same thing about the Lakers back in the day. Mm-hmm. They're just better than everybody. I do think that the Eagles with the Barkley running game can hang with them, but it's indoors and air conditioning, and I just think Mahomes, take him out of the weather and you put him on turf like that, I mean, he's just going to be amazing.
A couple of thoughts. The Bills have run into their bowls, They can't get over that hump. This is one thing I saw on Twitter last night. Dating back to 1972, NFL teams that have scored 4 touchdowns and committed 0 turnovers in a playoff game are 85-6. The Bills' last 2 playoff losses at Arrowhead are 2 of the 6. Like, it's just
no matter what you do.
Sometimes there's that team that you just can't get through. In terms of the Super Bowl, I think there's going to be plenty of time to preview that. I hate the Chiefs. I'm a Bronco fan. My wife is a Chiefs fan, so it puts me in a weird pickle all the time. But I do think, and I have an appreciation for sports history. And at this point, we're watching the Michael Jordan Bulls of our generation.
Absolutely.
We're watching the Tiger Woods of our generation right now. There's going to be players, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, that maybe never win a Super Bowl because they're playing in the same era as Patrick Mahomes in the Kansas City Chiefs.
Well said.
There's going to be teams, great teams. The Bills of this year were a great team. The Lamar Jackson Ravens are great teams that never reached their zenith because of Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yeah, and
it sucks. It's I mean, it's great to see though, because I feel like at a certain point, America is rooting for the Chiefs to lose and to not do it, but you have to sit back and appreciate what you're seeing.
Yep.
You are seeing history.
Andy Reid's greatness.
Yep.
You're seeing maybe the greatest quarterback of all time, coached by maybe the greatest coach of all time.
And how they've assembled their roster. I mean, look how they've ham and egged with just veteran cast-offs or guys that were, quote unquote, on the couch, coming back from injury, and guys that were making plays for them that were, nicked up or, banged up and or given up for dead. Mm-hmm. And the fact that DeAndre Hopkins is going to a Super Bowl and not much of a factor, but yet there he is in case they need him. I mean, it's pretty amazing that they've managed to do this. And I think in a lot of ways, I mean, if the Cowboys were to just look and see how they're doing it with a quarterback that's making a lot of their cap, not as much as Dak, obviously, but it is really something to behold, because especially in this day and age of the salary cap where you're forced to change and just to try to keep up, the fact that here they are again, I mean, another Super Bowl for these guys in a very short period of time. I mean, there's a lot of praise to go around.
It's amazing to see. It
starts with, obviously the quarterback and Andy Reid, but, how organizationally, in terms of who they bring into the building is really, really a work of art.
And Steve Spagnuolo, I mean, think about that.
That's what I was going to
get. That corner blitz.
Genius.
That he brings, that he hadn't seen all year. He disguised it. They knew, I mean, Romo was saying, I wonder what kind of pressure they're going to bring, because with Spagnuolo, you never know. And we're guessing. And even as they line up, Romo likes to say who's going to come. You couldn't tell. And then the corner comes off, and it puts. Well, they're just better than everybody.
And they disguised it so well because the Bills had their protection sliding to the left, so it was going to be wide open regardless. Like that blitz was the perfect pressure at the perfect time for the Bills play call.
Yep. Hello?
Hello. People are calling Don to wish him a happy birthday. But yeah, we could potentially be seeing the greatest defensive coordinator of all time right now. Like and
I don't think Cook was on the field for that play either.
It's insane what we're seeing with the Chiefs, though. Possibly the greatest quarterback of all time, possibly the greatest coach, possibly the greatest DC, possibly the greatest tight end. It's just insane what we're seeing, and hopefully they lose this next Super Bowl. Bob, anything before we go?
Shout out Tom Guerrero.
I don't know if Tom's in there. But,
damn it, Tom. He's got other things going on.
I'm sure he is. Joseph Perez already has a prediction. He's saying Chiefs 30, Eagles 17.
So that hits the under in the Chiefs. All right.
I think they're point and a half.
Point and a half, and the over-under is 49.5. So we'll see what happens. We got plenty of time to preview that. Got plenty of time to talk about the Spurs, which we will do more on Thursday. But that's all we got for you today on the Sneakers and Cleats podcast. Remember to download, rate, review, subscribe, give us a 5-star rating, tell a friend, tell an enemy. Thanks for everyone who tuned in live for this live reaction show for the Brian Schottenheimer hire. It's going to be a very interesting off season. We'll see you on Thursday.